We begin today in Amherst, Massachusetts. According to Wikipedia, Amherst is a town in Hampshire County, Massachusetts, United States, in the Connecticut River Valley. As of the 2010 census, the population was 37,819, making it the highest populated municipality in Hampshire County. An observer witnessed a cylindrical object hovering at approximately 1,000 feet altitude with very little movement on a clear day.
It's going.
You're recording it?
Yeah. Babe. But it was all the way down here.
It's gotta be a plane. No, it's because it's just a perspective.
Oh my God. What the fuck?
Why is it? What the fuck is that?
The person says that the event lasted about 15 minutes before he lost sight of it. Fortunately for everyone, he was able to capture video footage and photos before he lost sight of the object. At one point, two small aircraft were seen approaching the object, which appears to be several times larger than the aircraft. At the time of the sighting, it was clear, and there was literally very little wind in the area. Eventually, the object moved out of the line of sight behind some trees in a position that seemed to be almost directly over downtown Amherst. The observer estimates the object to be at least 100 feet in length. Our next story is about a series of UFO sightings in the Las Vegas, Nevada area that took place on July 14th and then again on July 16th. The story begins on the 14th when two friends were out on a deck watching a large storm pass through the area. A short time later, one of the friends left to return home, leaving only one witness with a camera to capture the sighting on film. The remaining friend returned to the deck to observe the slow-moving storm again, and that is when she noticed a large red disc hovering still as can be in the distance over the condo in front of her view. She was immediately startled and began to look to see if the object was moving, trying to make out details.
It's a drone. Drone, bitch, look.
A police one?
No, come back. Ah. Huh? What the? What was green and red lights? Like Christmas.
Like Christmas, like please.
It seemed to have 3 or 4 red lights in a row across the body. The observer reports that, as she watched it, she wasn't able to make the appearance out as much anymore and felt like it got blurrier to her eyes. Around this time, her neighbors were bringing in groceries, and she turned their attention to the object. After seeing it for himself, the neighbor ran inside and got his girlfriend and their daughter. Altogether, 4 people witnessed the event. The object hovered in the sky, fell at a noticeable amount, caught itself, rose straight up very slowly, and then fell again slowly, paused, then continued to disappear behind the building in front of the observers over a 10-minute span. The submitter says there are some points to take note of from this sighting. Number 1, there was a very, very, very big storm coming in. The weather did not affect the object's stability at all, no swaying or side-to-side motion. Number 2, 2 planes are in the footage seen leaving during this time, which is good for size comparison and other observations. Number 3, not a single plane is seen coming in on the flight path during the entire duration this object was airborne. Within a minute or two of this object falling from sight, flights began coming in quickly, one after the other, only a minute or 2 apart, which the observer found odd. The original observer described her experience like this, and I quote, "Lastly, I had a feeling for a minute after watching this thing fall that it might be someone with a drone at the time. However, my instincts tell me it's not due to the size of the object. The amount of strange things I've seen in the sky lately, and most importantly, I saw it again a couple of days later in a completely separate part of the sky, much further away, at around 3:45 a.m., while I was on my way to my car to pick up a friend from work." Very interesting sighting from Las Vegas, Nevada. And I thought it was interesting, too, that she said all the airplanes coming into the airport stopped during the flight of this object and then resumed once it had disappeared from sight. So, does that mean that we were looking at a drone that was maybe in the way of the flight path of the airport, which incidentally will land you in the Crowbar Hotel if you ever get caught doing that? Or are we looking at something a whole lot more interesting?
UFO Planet.
Quick, start the car and then head to Mooresville, North Carolina. By all accounts, they have some pretty interesting UFO sightings there, including the one in this story. Some dude was out for the day with his father when a spacecraft appeared out of nowhere, catching the observer off guard. Because the person was on their way to work, he had very little time to spend recording the object. If it were me, I would have taken a mental health day and gone on a UFO recording adventure, but that didn't happen here.
Hey, this is a spacecraft. You see that? Alright, this is all I can get of it. Y'all gotta go.
The UFO appears to have the shape most of us associate with an unidentified flying object. Although the video is very unstable and looks like it was captured while the observer was in motion, you can clearly see an object hovering over the trees. As per normal, the observer offered very little in the way of details to a father-son experience most of us would consider life-changing. Does the lack of details take away from the validity of the experience? You decide.
UFO Planet.
An observer in Oceanside, California had an experience that some may describe as odd and unusual. On March 3rd, he spotted a very bright orange light in the sky that seemed to be hovering. He says that the light would disappear and then reappear. This scenario repeated itself over a period of 20 minutes. He says that the light appears to pulsate, and you can clearly see that in the video. He reports that there was no sound coming from it. We think it's safe to rule out both the sun and the moon, unless, of course, we missed the memo about them disappearing and reappearing. To the right of the light, you can see the outline of a flagpole that may be used as a size reference. The light looks large. Here in Alberta, I've seen similar lights that always end up being oil field flare stacks once I get close enough to make a detailed observation. They, too, make the night sky flicker. Again, I don't think that's the case here. Not exactly an unidentified flying object, just an unidentified light that is nearly as fascinating to look at. Now we are off to Colombia to view a UFO flying over a large hill. The observer in this story says that the video was recorded on January 24th at exactly 5:56 p.m. on the road that leads from La Vega to Bogota. Unfortunately, that is about it for information supplied by the shooter. An examination of the video shows an object that appears to be moving slowly at a low elevation. Even though the video is very jiggly, you can see that the object is definitely moving. The observer described the object with one word: black. We also described the object with one word, except our choice is unidentified. By way of reminder, when submitting UFO photos and videos for examination, a well-thought-out description of the event can go a long way to help the experts decipher what we are looking at.
UFO Planet.
This UFO sighting comes from Calgary, Alberta, Canada, about 3 hours west of the UFO Planet studios. A group of people were witness to a UFO flying over the city.
Ryan, what is this?
Carl, that's what I'm telling you, dude.
What is this? Ryan, this is huge.
Carl, this is what I'm telling you, dude.
Look at it, Ryan.
I am.
Babe, you're looking? Look at it as long as you can.
The shooter of this video described the object as a cigar-shaped light flying at 45 degrees. You can hear in their voices that they have absolutely no idea what they're looking at. Unfortunately, in the dark sky, it's hard to make out detail, but you can see an object moving without making any noise. Although the experience was fascinating for the observers in Calgary, they had very little to say about the event. So, what bugs you? You'll know what I mean in just a minute. Our next UFO story takes place in the homicide hunter city, Colorado Springs, Colorado. The shooter reports that he was on a long bike ride in Colorado Springs near Palmer Lake when he captured a photo of a UFO. However, this is one of those events where the person shooting only noticed the object later when he was looking over his photos. At the time he snapped the photo, he was admiring the scenery off to the north hillside across the lake, and he says that he never saw or heard anything unusual. He also reports that there were people fishing across the lake and a few people behind him. However, no one acted as if they had seen anything unusual in the sky. From what I can see, we are looking at something with wings. So now you know what I meant when I said, what bugs you? Do you agree? Talk about scaring the pee out of someone. That's kind of what happened here in Fulton, California this past February 19th. A woman says she got up in the night to take a pee, looked out the bathroom window, and the object on your screen is what was staring back at her. After she took care of business, she arose from the throne and the object was still there. That's when she got her cell phone and captured this photo. Next, she went to wake up her husband so he could have a look. But by the time he was up, the object was no longer visible. The observer says she has no explanation for what she saw, especially since it was silent. Based on the photograph she captured on her cell phone, we seem to be looking at an object with 6 lower panels and 1 upper panel. 3 of the panels appear to be illuminated. The photo reminds me of a cell phone tower antenna, but we know that's not the case because the object disappeared. Cell phone towers don't appear and disappear. This is one of a mind scratcher for sure. I hope you, my awesome viewers, have some ideas, because I sure don't. The woman in this story says she's confused, but we think we can fix that for her. She reports that on February 23rd, she captured footage of an egg-shaped object traveling over her city of East Islip, New York. She says it looked like it was blowing bubbles, and that's when she got a really weird feeling and realized it was egg-shaped and bright yellow as it moves out of the clouds. Watch and listen to some of her experience, and then we'll explain what actually happened.
Look at that moon. Should a moon move like that? I'm really confused. I've never seen a moon move like that. Is that a moon? I don't know what that is. I don't understand. That's not a moon. That's not a moon. Oh my God, that's not a moon. Oh my God, that's egg-shaped. Oh my God, that's not a moon. That's not a moon. Holy shit. Oh my God, that really is. Oh my God, I'm really seeing a UFO. Shit. Oh my God. That's a UFO. It's a UFO. Oh my God. No fucking way. This is fucking cool. Look at it. Look at it. It's fucking. Oh my God. Look at it. Oh my God. Mom. Mom. Come out here. Mom. 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 Come here. Oh my God, you gotta see this. You gotta see
Although
this.
the woman in this story feels like she just had an amazing UFO experience, that is not the case. What she was watching was the moon. The moon was not moving. The clouds were moving and produced an illusion that the moon was doing the moving. She addressed this in her description this way. Captured some very compelling footage that shows this wasn't an overlapping clouds, making the moon appear to be moving like a mirage. Unfortunately, this is a case of confusion, just like she said, and nope, it sure isn't a mirage, it's very real.
It's a UFO, I'm serious. I'm dead serious, come on. No, I'm not. Oh my God. Okay.
However, it is the clouds that are moving, and she's not the first person to be confused by the very same thing. We see multiple videos every week that exhibit the same confusion. Nice video, but she's going to need to keep looking for her first UFO experience.
Look at it. Oh my God. How cool is that? Oh my God. Do you see it? I do see it. Mom, that's it. What is that?
UFO planet.
They were just having a little meeting in the sky. That's what the observer in this next story said about a group of lights moving around over New York City. The observer reports she was hanging out in her complex, where they have an area that faces New York City, and that's when she noticed the lights.
So they're having a little meeting. So this is the shit I'm talking about, Tori. Look at this little meeting in the sky. Crazy, right? And they're just there. They're just there hanging out.
The observer from this sighting says she always sees UFOs because the sky is open and they're really obvious. However, on this day it was strange because there were 4 just hovering together as though they were having a meeting. She says that they were there for a very long time, but it seemed as though no one even noticed them. She wanted to film until they separated to see what would happen, but they were there for far too long, and then out of nowhere, they were all gone. Too bad, so sad in New York. It would have been nice to find out what the meeting was all about. The shooter in this story made sure to let us know that the photos and videos were shot from the back seat of a moving vehicle and that he wasn't the one doing the driving. That's a good reminder to everyone. Pull over and let someone who's not behind the wheel capture the photos and videos. This story comes from Keesby, New Jersey, and was shot on October 18th in 2019 while the observer was on a road trip to Vermont. He described the object as a black diamond UFO in the sky. If you look closely, you can see another aircraft, or at least some sort of a craft, flying a bit higher and to the left of the diamond craft. Keesby is an unincorporated community located within Woodbridge Township in Middlesex County, New Jersey, United States. It is located on the western outskirts of Perth Amboy. We couldn't find any references online to military installations in the area, or any other government complexes for that matter. Are one or both of these objects ours, or might they have a much more interesting origin? Nonetheless, this daytime UFO sighting is sure to make the excitement level shoot up in the UFO community. This story comes from a UFO event on the grounds of the United States Naval Academy, Annapolis, Maryland. The United States Naval Academy, commonly referred to as the USNA or simply the Navy, is a federal service academy adjacent to Annapolis, Maryland. Established on the 10th of October in 1845 under Secretary of Navy George Bancroft, it is the second oldest of 5 U.S. service academies and educates officers for commissioning primarily into the United States Navy and the United States Marine Corps. The shooter of the UFO photo described this object like shaped like a stingray without the tail. The UFO in the photo was not seen at the time the snapshot was taken. It wasn't until later when the shooter analyzed his photos that he noticed the object. He says he manipulated the photo to see the object better and noticed a second spherical object. Both objects are tiny and difficult to see. However, they are clearly visible, but lack the detail to make a valid assessment.
UFO planet.
They say all good farmers are outstanding in their field. For sure that applies to the farmer in this story, because he captured video footage of a UFO. The farmer says he first noticed a bright ball of light outside his bedroom window. After going outside for a closer look, he says the light was up in the sky above the fields on the farm where he lived. The light hovered in the area for around 5 to 10 minutes, during which time he captured the footage we are looking at now. Uncertain as to what he was looking at, the observer has submitted the footage to UFO experts in hopes of finding an explanation. This story comes to us from the Lakewood Fort McPherson train station in Atlanta, Georgia. The observer was waiting for his train when he noticed multiple lights in the sky. He says there were 2 lights sitting next to each other, glowing brightly, when a third light appeared.
Lakewood Fort McPherson train station in Atlanta, Georgia, and look what I saw. When I first saw it, it was just 2 lights, and now they're spacing further and further apart, and I never thought I would catch one. Yeah, this is the 31st of August, and that's not flares. There's a plane going down by here for reference, but
the observer says he doesn't think his eyes are playing tricks on him, but he does admit to being about 12 to 15 miles north of the Hartsfield-Jackson International Airport. However, he doesn't think that these lights are airplanes. Later, he goes on to say that if you look closely, you'll see one go from a semi-stationary ball of light and turn into a plane.
That's crazy. And it's like I got somewhere to go, and I'm sitting here watching this, and the one at the bottom looks like it's flickering pretty bright. The one at the top looks like it's pulling away and fading away.
I guess the million-dollar question here is, are they all airplanes or something else? At night, it can be very difficult to tell for sure.
If you could look real close, like there's something flashing, something small between the second and third light, like right in here somewhere. Like there's something in there kind of blinking. I don't know if you see it. I don't know if that's another one coming out or not. But, alright.
Everyone loves a good storm, and it's no different in Clovis, California. On March 10th, an observer was recording a storm, following the top and right leading edges of the weather front with his camera, looking for rotation. He says that explains why he was panning around the camera so much. Later, when reviewing the video footage, he noticed something odd, something he never noticed while recording. In the video, an object seems to appear, hover, blink, and then disappear. Not satisfied with blindly believing the video, he set out to debunk his own footage. He admits he was shooting the footage through glass patio doors. In fact, he says he was right up against the doors, and there were no lights on in the room nor a television set, as he had turned everything off to get a better view of the storm as he scanned the sky for funnel clouds. The shooter of this video is confused, not understanding what he captured on film and why he didn't notice it at the time of the recording. The only thing he has to say is, "The video is all I have." Have you ever heard the story of the flying hay bale? No? Well, great, because you're about to. For this story, we are off to Homer Glen, Illinois, where a family was standing in line for a hay ride when they snapped some memory photos. Later in the day, when the photos were reviewed, an object was noticed in one of the shots. Strange as it may seem, the UFO looks a lot like a bale of hay. Maybe that's because they were there for a hay ride. The shooter has no clue what the object is, but said whatever it is, it flew past so quickly it wasn't noticeable to the human eye. There's no doubt about it, we can see something in the sky in this photo. Some will say it's a bug, and others will be convinced it's a super fast UFO. We don't know what to think, except next time you're on a hayride, keep your eyes peeled for that flying hay bale. The Phoenix lights are back. Well, kind of, sort of, almost. An observer was landing at the Phoenix International Airport when he witnessed multiple lights to the right of the aircraft outside his window. At first he thought it was a line of other flights coming in to land their aircraft, but after watching them for a few minutes, he noticed the elevation of the aircraft he was in changed, but theirs didn't. The observer reports that the lights stayed at the same elevation during the entire landing. The observer says it this way: "You can't tell in the video, but we are already below the mountain peaks, so this can't be a landing line for planes." Other passengers on the aircraft also noticed the lights and were discussing what they thought they were, but no one seemed to know. The observer went on to say he knows how bright lights can cause an orbit effect within a camera lens, but is certain that this is not the case here.
UFO.
It was about 5:30 p.m. in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, when an observer was outside to close his gate when he noticed a black object flying overhead. At first, he thought it was a bird, but something just wasn't right about that. There were no wings. The object observed was flying at approximately the same height as a passenger airliner would fly. The observer realized that he wasn't witnessing a bird. It was too high for a bird, and it had no wings. And it couldn't be a balloon because it was just too big for a balloon. So he surmises that he was watching an unidentified flying object. He had a clear view of the object and says it was very large. He reports the size of about the same as the cockpit section of a large passenger airliner. It was moving fast, about the same speed as a jet. It was square-like, but as it flies and turns, the observer says he could see the top part of the object is rectangular, with straight lines running across from the center to the edge. He says that it didn't emit any sound at all as it flew by, and that he lost sight of the object when it flew past his home to the back of the house. He says he has shown the video to a few of his close friends, but none of them are able to explain what it is that he saw that day over his home. Las Vegas, Nevada is the setting for our next story. This UFO sighting took place on January 9th between 7:15 and 7:40 a.m. The observer had just gotten ready to walk to a work conference he was attending when a hot air balloon caught his attention. He didn't think much of it and began scanning the sky, and that's when he noticed a very large, slow-moving, rectangular object. After a few minutes of personal viewing, he decided to take a video because he kind of figured no one would believe his story if he didn't have some proof. He wondered what it could be, moving so slow. It didn't look like any of the blimps he'd seen at sporting events, and he thinks it was moving far too slow to be a conventional aircraft and seemed way too large to be a drone. In reality, he has no clue what it was, which is why he says he submitted it for investigation. The observer summarized his experience this way: "I saw a seemingly large craft, dark in color, moving left to right, somewhat steady, but very slow, almost hovering, traveling towards Las Vegas. You can clearly see a large rectangular object moving across the horizon. In some ways it reminds me of the banner UFOs from Monroe and Nampa. Because there was a hot air balloon in the area, it would be wise for us to consider that. However, that wouldn't be my description of choice." This story comes to us from an observer who was attending the Easter Jeep Safari on the Fins and Things Trail near Moab, Utah. He says he was taking pictures of Jeeps coming down the trail at 12:41 p.m. when he captured something odd on film. He never noticed the object until later when reviewing his photos, a regular occurrence in the UFO reporting community. At the time of the incident, he never saw or heard anything unusual. The shooter is asking someone to let him know if he just captured the mothership or if it's just an incident of an insect close to the lens. He says he doesn't care one way or the other. He just wants to put his mind to rest. Do you remember the UFO story from Monroe, Ohio that we showed you on the program back in February? You're looking at the video right now. Back then, several viewers thought they could make out an aircraft pulling the object they thought was an advertising banner. We have another sighting now that looks nearly the same. This time it comes from Nampa, Idaho, recorded just recently on March 17th. An observer there captured a series of photos of a banner-looking object that looks nearly identical to the banner in Monroe, Ohio. The observer in Idaho says that he was outside when he noticed a rectangular object traveling across the sky. Like the sighting in Monroe, the shooter in Idaho says there was no airplane pulling the banner, and there were no aircraft captured in the photos. Now, that's very important information. If this object was being pulled by an aircraft, the plane would be close to the banner and easy to see. An observer wouldn't need to strain their eyes to see the airplane, but be able to plainly see the banner. It just doesn't work that way. So we believe neither the sighting in Monroe, Ohio, or the sighting in Nampa, Idaho, could possibly be sky advertising banners. The evidence just isn't there to support that theory. Something else we found odd: the observer in Idaho had a mere 14 words to say about an event that many of us would find very fascinating and possibly even life-changing.
UFO Planet.
This story comes from Thornhill, Ontario, here in Canada, and was recorded yesterday, March 20th. The submitter says that he and his girlfriend first observed several glowing orbs in triangle formation near their home at around 9 p.m. They immediately went outside to take a better look. They saw a commercial airliner coming in and recorded it for comparison. Then, almost immediately, they noticed 3 glowing orbs flying in triangle formation directly behind them.
By contrast, that's what an airplane looks like.
Look.
Oh, geez, there they are again. Oh my God, I have no clue what that is.
Told you I saw something weird.
We gotta get out from under this light into the dark. Jeez. Look, there's another one. There's another one coming up over there, behind that tree. Look at this. There's 4 of them. I'm gonna try to zoom in. Are you taping this?
Yeah, I am.
There's no lights flashing. It's a solid light.
Oh, one of them's starting to dim out.
Oh.
The front one you can't even see on my camera anymore.
No, that one's gone.
The couple said that the balls of light were silent. Together, they observed them for several minutes until they disappeared from view. Anytime the moon is showing over Las Vegas, Nevada, there is a Facebooker who does a live mooncast. Twice now while doing her show, she has captured large objects passing in front of the moon. The most recent event took place on March 22nd when the footage you are looking at now was captured. People capture footage of objects passing in front of the moon more often than you'd think. The argument always ends up being whether the objects are something flying inside the atmosphere or above the atmosphere. Sometimes they look like satellites, sometimes birds, some look like airplanes, and we have even seen boomerang-looking objects. And then, of course, there are those objects that are just hard to distinguish. The object recorded on March 22nd tends to have the shape many would associate with an unidentified flying object or a UFO. Does that mean it is a UFO? Well, technically it is a UFO until it can be identified. On Sunday, March 14th at approximately 1900 hours, an observer stepped out of his snowcat to stretch and noticed an object in the corner of his eye. At first, he thought it was maybe a bird, but it was way too big. He says there was no sound coming from the object, so that eliminates a plane or a helicopter. It was too windy for a glider and too windy for a paraglider. A significant storm was rolling in that night, and the object still maintained its path. The observer reports he could see a kind of a mist or aura around the object, especially on the video. He says it seemed like it would level out or turn 360 degrees back and forth and was moving as it was flying. As you can see, he was in a valley, so if there was any sound, he would have heard it, and there was no sound. There were no lights, but appeared to have some sort of aura, as he mentioned before. The observer says the strange events did not end with the sighting. On March 17th, days later, around 2100 hours, he was in his snowcat again, at the highest point of the trails he grooms, when the speakers in the snowcat started to crackle and the music started to mesh with itself. He was listening to a downloaded song on his iPhone since there was no service out there. It was very calm that night when suddenly snow and wind abruptly surrounded his snowcat. This continued for about a minute and then went back to being calm again, and music went back to normal. This could have been a coincidence, he says, but he also says that he had a very strange feeling when it happened. The observer is currently working with UFO investigators who are examining the evidence.
UFO Planet.
In this next UFO story, a group of people were leaving work from their night shift in Cheyenne, Wyoming, when a long light high in the sky captured their attention. The observer says the light was super long, was traveling slower than a meteor, and faster than an aircraft.
What the f*** is that? I'm videoing it.
Yeah, me too. What is that?
I'm trying to zoom in as much as I can.
Yo, what is that?
Dude, that's trippy as f***. Hi.
The observer says the light took about 3 to 4 minutes to cross the sky and then appeared to split. At that point, they could see what looked like the tail of the two split objects. The rear of the objects were very bright, almost like they had fire coming out the end. Now look at this video captured just this morning in Fort Collins, Colorado. Look familiar? Clearly the same lights that were viewed from Cheyenne. This observer says that at 5:38 a.m. this morning, the 24th of March, 2021, he went out front of his house to warm up his truck before gym and noticed a very bright white line of lights approximately 500 feet above the ground, moving along approximately over Horsetooth Mountain Reservoir. The UFO was moving slowly in the north direction. He says it did not appear to be the Starlink satellites, as this object was flying low. When you put the videos side by side, they are both the same object, very clear. If it's not the Starlink satellites, what do you think this could be? For this story, we travel to Mexico City, Mexico, where an observer has captured footage of a UFO passing near an aircraft coming in to land at the Mexico City International Airport on March 7th. He says this is the second time he has seen the same UFO from his balcony in Mexico City. The first time, he thought it was a balloon. This time, however, it was going perpendicular to the wind and flying parallel with a plane headed to the Mexico City airport. The UFO was changing shape or rotating. He snapped 3 pictures, and we see it has 2 sides, one which is silver or shiny and has a design or line, according to the observer. He says that just for a split second you can see another object he believes is flying faster than the speed of sound, traveling in the same direction. The observer wonders if the pilots landing at the airport noticed the object, but obviously has no way to find out. They were being followed by anti-gravity craft in Clifton Park, New York, at least according to the observer in this story. Based on the information provided, the observer in this story believes the American government is using autonomous technology to track Americans illegally. This guy is for real. He says the U.S. military-industrial complex is now using ARV anti-gravity technology in commercial aircraft and stars disguised as UFOs as a cover for black projects. Many airline companies are being used as a cover for these black government spy abduction programs. The observer says this thing freaked him out because it was ejecting orb drones out of it. Once he broke out the camera, it disappeared. He says he's never seen anything like this type of anti-gravity aircraft in person before. This thing looked like a plane without wings. It made no sound, and in his words, it was freaky shit.
Look at this thing. Look at it park itself in the sky. Anti-gravity. Look at it. Look what I'm showing you guys. Seriously. Look at this thing. Anti-gravity. Look at this drop something. What was that thing it just dropped? What the hell is that? Holy crap, what is that, guys? Look at what I was showing you guys.
This is all part of the eugenic transhuman agenda, according to the Observer. Millions have been abducted without their knowledge. Many hidden truths will be uncovered through the knowledge of this technology. Well, we asked our team of experts to lend a hand with this sighting. They think that the freaky shit the Observer was witnessing is nothing more than a helicopter. True, it might be the government after him, but they think it's probably for escaping some sort of an institution rather than to drain his brain of information. Well, they're not buying into it. Are you?
Anti-gravity.
UFO Planet.
Westerville, Ohio. That is where our next story takes place. An observer there reports capturing footage of an approaching aircraft that appears to be morphing from a bright orb with a cloud into a jet. The observer says he's not stupid, nor is he a rocket scientist, but he knows what he saw that night. He says the headlight on the craft is well beyond the typical brightness of other jets he has seen or has gotten videos of in the past. Most jets in the night sky cast a dimmer yellow-white headlight, whereas this craft, much like a black triangle, had a headlight beam that was virtually pure white. Playback of the video displays what appears to be a potential shape-shifting event in progress at a distance.
That has got to be one of the brightest headlights I've ever seen on any conventional jet. Assuming this is a conventional jet. It has the sound of a conventional jet, but that never means anything to me. Okay, directly overhead as usual. It's a jet. And
the observer says the obvious concept to this video is that once the craft finally made its way over his head, it absolutely looked and sounded very much like a conventional jet. But was it? At the time, he was good with that conclusion until he loaded the video into his computer. All the questions arise at the beginning of the video. So, he spotted a very bright white light off the west, approaching in his general direction, most likely a jet on approach to the airport. But once he saw the video, it appeared that the camera saw more than the naked eyes did. The craft clearly appears to be transforming. His question is it transforming? A resident in Hawaii has a doorbell camera he says is set to record anything moving that is larger than a cat. He has it pointed at his driveway area. On March 22nd at around 10 p.m., he received a cell phone notification alerting him to movement in the driveway. He immediately opened the app to review the video. He didn't expect what he saw. On his phone, he had video of a strange string of pulsating lights seemingly taking off out of the driveway. The observer says the object moved up into the air, flew southbound over Pearl Harbor, and dropped down into the ocean, and that it makes a strange whoosh sound as it passes the trees during takeoff. He also notes that whatever this was, it never triggered his surveillance lights in the driveway. In the video, the object was illuminated by the infrared light emanating from the camera. He says the whole incident has left him quite flustered. Now and then we see submissions of objects that kind of seem easy to identify, like an aircraft flying overhead with a trailing vapor trail, but the observers believe it's a UFO. We decided to look back in our archives to find one of the better examples about what we're talking about, and we found one from Mississippi in 2016. The observer from this story was staying at a hotel on Biloxi Beach in Mississippi on May 23, 2016. This is how he tells the story. He and his son were on the back balcony area of the hotel looking at the Gulf of Mexico water and beautiful sunset at around 7:30 p.m. when they both noticed a large circular white UFO in the sky above them. It had no wings and appeared to be at a high altitude. The UFO seemed to be moving at a very high rate of speed, but it had no sound. The UFO glowed a bright white color, and at times it appeared to be cigar-shaped, but mostly circular. It was difficult to tell the exact shape of the UFO since it was at such a high altitude.
May 23rd, 2016. Of course, I'm here in Biloxi, Mississippi. And this is what's left of that UFO. You can see it in the distance. It's heading, of course I showed you up close footage of it just a second ago, but it's heading kind of, let's see, that would be southwest, heading southwest down into the Gulf. But that was really interesting. Of course it has a trail behind it, which normally I guess you wouldn't see with UFOs, but some of them I'm sure probably could do that. But the interesting thing about it is very high altitude, had no wings. It was kind of looked like a white color.
The observer says it was amazing to see this object in person, and he was excited to capture video footage of the UFO. So, are sightings like this UFOs, or just misidentified high-altitude aircraft? We emailed our experts who replied saying that many people confuse simple aircraft with UFOs all the time. It happens because the bright sunlight is reflecting off the fuselage of the aircraft, making it appear to be a bright cylinder. The wings are not as easy to see because of their position. They can't reflect sunlight. We see the bottom of the wings, not the top, where the sun does strike the wing. Inevitably, the final word is up to each of us to decide. As for me, I'm going to go with a misidentified aircraft. What about you? A storm brewing in Fredonia, New York was the focus of the observer in this story. He was outside filming the storm when he unintentionally captured footage of an unidentified flying object. At first the observer was convinced it was a bird until he realized how fast it was moving and that it appears to have a trail behind it. He also thinks the object seems large for the perceived distance. He was facing the northeast at the time he shot the video and was level with the horizon. Clearly, the observer doesn't think this is an insect. He's already ruled out a bird. So, what does that leave us? The observer in this story was outside talking on the phone when they noticed a light approaching from the north. He says he watched the light do some pretty incredible acrobatics before remembering his cell phone had a camera and began shooting the footage that we are looking at. The observer reports that the UFO seemed to be at about 3,000 feet altitude when first noticed. It was descending rapidly, directly towards his position. It appeared to descend just into the cloud deck, bob in and out, eventually coming to hover near the bottom of the clouds. The light would dim periodically, and simultaneously appear to descend when it did so, usually after a sharp curving maneuver. The color was variable from a deep, barely visible red to a brilliant white, trending towards yellowish most of the time. Most of the more startling color changes are not noticeable on the video. There was no noise, and it seemed to move effortlessly in any direction. The speed seemed excessive for a drone at the altitude that it appeared to be at. This is not the first time the observer has seen this phenomena in the area, but it is the first time that he captured it on video. A group of friends were traveling in a vehicle in McHenry, Illinois, when a glowing light captured their attention. According to the Observer, they were at the intersection of McCollum Lake Road and Richmond Road in McHenry when they saw the object above McCollum Lake moving at a speed that a low-flying plane would probably move at.
Little frozen peach bits in it, it's good.
Where did you get it from?
The ice cream store. That is a weird looking light on a plane.
Is that a UFO?
What is that? It's like, hold on, I'm gonna
capture this.
The UFO consisted of a single fiery orange glow, mainly round in shape, but the bright area within the round shape was not consistent in its position or intensity. It flickered like a fireplace or lantern would. It was almost as if the plane had a very large lantern light on it, or maybe inside it, but it looked nothing like the typical light that you would see on an airplane. There were no other lights around it anywhere. The Observer says he has seen meteorites before, and it didn't look anything like a meteorite. The light continued in a southeast direction for about 30 to 45 more seconds before it became more distant and disappeared. Then, the sky was completely dark in the place that it once was. A group of friends were traveling in a vehicle in McHenry, Illinois, when a glowing light captured their attention. According to the Observer, they were at the intersection of McCollum Lake Road and Richmond Road in McHenry when they saw the object above McCollum Lake moving at a speed that a low-flying plane would probably move at.
little frozen peach bits in it, it's good.
Where did you get it from?
The ice cream store. That is a weird looking light on a plane.
Is that a UFO?
What is that? It's like, hold on, I'm gonna
capture this.
The UFO consisted of a single fiery orange glow, mainly round in shape, but the bright area within the round shape was not consistent in its position or intensity. It flickered like a fireplace or lantern would. It was almost as if the plane had a very large lantern light on it, or maybe inside it, but it looked nothing like the typical light that you would see on an airplane. There were no other lights around it anywhere. The Observer says he has seen meteorites before, and it didn't look anything like a meteorite. The light continued in a southeast direction for about 30 to 45 more seconds before it became more distant and disappeared. Then, the sky was completely dark in the place that it once was. An ordinary road trip turned into an extraordinary road trip when an observer in Arizona snapped a series of photos of a diamond-shaped object traveling across the tops of the mountains. The Observer says he was traveling west on Pecos Road in Ahwatukee, Arizona, when he saw the strange object. He describes the UFO as diamond-shaped, darkish-looking. This is not a situation of someone snapping photos and noticing the object later, but rather the object was noticed and the Observer stopped on the side of the road specifically to capture the photographs. The Observer was able to shoot half a dozen snaps before the object disappeared over the backside of South Mountain. He has absolutely no clue what he was looking at and has gone to the professionals to help him figure it out. For just a minute, the Observer in this story thought maybe he was reliving the Phoenix Lights, except this time in Scottsdale, Arizona. The Observer says he was looking out the living room sliding glass window from his family's house when he noticed 3 pulsating lights in an equilateral triangle formation hovering over one of his neighbor's homes. One of the lights began to move towards the west at a fast rate of speed, while the other 2 remained stationary for an additional 1 to 2 minutes. Then, the second light began to move towards the east at a slower rate of speed compared to the first object that moved. The central light remained stationary for about 15 minutes and then faded out of view. He says he didn't have any feelings or emotions when he saw the lights, either during or after the sighting. I don't know, I think a lot of people would have a lot of emotion, or at least have a lot of shock, if they were to witness the same lights. What do you think?
UFO Planet.
There is something fishy going on in Yellowstone National Park. At least there appears to be once you examine this photo taken by an observer passing through the park on a July vacation. This is another case of shoot now, notice the UFO later. A couple were on vacation in Yellowstone National Park, passing through the Grand Teton Mountains, enjoying the scenery, when the passengers snapped a few photos of the gorgeous splendor. Later, when showing friends their vacation photos, one of the friends noticed an object that didn't belong. Neither person traveling in the vehicle that day noticed the object, but admit they were looking at the beautiful scenery, not paying attention to the sky. The object, frozen in time in this photo, looks like a flying fish. Flying fish in Wyoming are highly unlikely, so that leaves us wondering, what on earth is this? A storm brewing in Fredonia, New York was the focus of the observer in this story. He was outside filming the storm when he unintentionally captured footage of an unidentified flying object. At first the observer was convinced it was a bird until he realized how fast it was moving and that it appears to have a trail behind it. He also thinks the object seems large for the perceived distance. He was facing the northeast at the time he shot the video and was level with the horizon. Clearly, the observer doesn't think this is an insect. He's already ruled out a bird. So, what does that leave us?
UFO Planet.
The observer in this story was outside talking on the phone when they noticed a light approaching from the north. He says he watched the light do some pretty incredible acrobatics before remembering his cell phone had a camera and began shooting the footage that we are looking at. The observer reports that the UFO seemed to be at about 3,000 feet altitude when first noticed. It was descending rapidly, directly towards his position. It appeared to descend just into the cloud deck, bob in and out, eventually coming to hover near the bottom of the clouds. The light would dim periodically, and simultaneously appear to descend when it did so, usually after a sharp curving maneuver. The color was variable from a deep, barely visible red to a brilliant white, trending towards yellowish most of the time. Most of the more startling color changes are not noticeable on the video. There was no noise, and it seemed to move effortlessly in any direction. The speed seemed excessive for a drone at the altitude that it appeared to be at. This is not the first time the observer has seen this phenomena in the area, but it is the first time that he captured it on video. This is one of the strangest UFO stories we've ever had on UFO Planet, or maybe I should say strangest looking. An observer and his wife were in their backyard in Riverside, California on Easter Sunday at 6:16 p.m. when the wife suddenly noticed an odd, bright, gold disc-like object flying from the west at a fast rate of speed, several thousand feet in the air and moving eastward. Below it was another cylinder-like object with green, red, and black that first appeared to be carried by the bright golden disc, but it flew and moved in parallel and was not attached. The object made no sound as it flew across the sky. With his phone already in hand, the observer quickly took 4 pictures with 2-second motion videos before it disappeared off to the east in a total time span of about 6 seconds.
Really hard to see, but...
The observer adds that they are about 8 miles from March Air Reserve Base and within the flight path of commercial aircraft coming in towards LAX and Ontario airports. They regularly see both military aircraft as well as commercial aircraft, but this object was like no other they had ever seen before, as it seemed to fly effortlessly through the sky.
UFO Planet.
This story is about a weird object captured on film by a motion detection camera in rural Williston, North Dakota. According to the submitter, the camera is mounted on top of a structure at a rural, unoccupied farmstead. Not sure if the events are related, but the farmer says there were 2 dead cows found in a row of trees less than a mile away, with no obvious cause of death and covered in mud. The strange thing is, there are no farms with cows around for 10 miles, and there were no cattle reported missing from nearby farms that did have cattle. The camera has been installed for a long period of time, but this is the first time the farmer has seen anything like this in the recordings and is unsure what to think of it. The object was able to trigger the farmer's motion detection camera to record. Once the recording ended, the next time recording was triggered was later that morning in the daylight.